So we're learning more about the federal charges filed against the leader of an armed militia group. The man is accused of detaining groups at the southern border, he and his group. The group is called the United Constitutional Patriots. They recently uploaded videos to their Facebook page, and it shows militia members who are sometimes armed stopping migrants near the border in New Mexico. Now, this group claims to be helping law enforcement. Despite recent criticism of the group, 69-year-old Larry Mitchell Hopkins, who was arrested for his involvement at the border, wasn't arrested for his recent involvement at the border. He was arrested in connection with a 2017 search of his home, where officials found firearms and ammunition. He could face 10 years in prison if convicted. Let's bring in Alicia Caldwell. She's an immigration reporter for the Wall Street Journal. She's been doing a lot of work on this and other stories. So, Alicia, I want to be clear. He was arrested for actually a gun possession charge, but not for what his group was doing at the border, correct?
Correct. He's facing charges of being a felon in possession of firearms and ammunition, which is in itself a felony.
All right. So more damning are the allegations that are coming out of the federal documents detailing what this group was doing to target Democrats. Tell us about that.
Right. So there's not a lot of specifics other than in the FBI charging document, there is a note that this group, or Mr. Hopkins in particular, was making efforts or plans to assassinate former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the financier George Soros, who's been the target of a lot of online discussion of who's financing migrant caravans and other sort of issues. But there's no other detail, so it's unclear if that was an investigation they pursued and dropped, if that was idle chatter. But it was significant enough, obviously, that the FBI put it into the charging document, the 7-page document that details why he was arrested on Saturday in New Mexico.
All right, so more about these groups. We've heard in the past about the Minutemen, right, who went to the border. They thought the government wasn't doing enough or didn't enough resources, so they were like, we'll go there and help it. Is this kind of along the same lines as the Minutemen?
Very similar. You know, under President Bush, many of your viewers may remember, you know, armed groups went out to the border and said, we're going to help. You don't have enough people. We'll be your backup. The Border Patrol at the time said, we don't need your backup. Citizens should not engage in law enforcement. The Border Patrol has said the same thing today, that it's a very specific skill set. It's a very specific task that law enforcement is trained to do, and that civilians, private civilians, should not engage in. But these groups are not new. They're gaining more attention now. Obviously, we have a lot going on at the border. You've had 189,000 people traveling as families between October and the end of March, the first chunk of the fiscal year for the federal government. Right. That's a lot of people, and there's a lot of attention coming from Washington. And now this group is taking some action. There's a similar group, a smaller group in Arizona, making its presence known. They've not uploaded videos to this nature that I'm aware of, but the action, the activity is not new.
You were telling me in the commercial, you were saying in the commercial break that this group appears to be more heavily armed than the Minutemen of the past?
Certainly than the groups I recall. That was at the beginning of my stages of being a border reporter back with the Associated Press. But yeah, these guys have a lot of rifles with them and tactical gear, and you'll notice the camouflage. You know, the guys in green in this video obviously are U.S. Border Patrol agents. Right. But the guys in the camouflage and the buoy hats and so on and so forth, that's a lot of gear. But we've seen, you know, things like that develop over the years. You know, 2006 was a slightly different time.
Let me ask you this. Why wasn't Larry Mitchell Hopkins charged with the activity at the border, impersonating? And we saw one video where they said we're Border Patrol and they were lying. So they were impersonating a law enforcement officer. Why wasn't he charged with something related to that?
That's a good question. So far, the FBI has declined to comment, and the U.S. Attorney's Office has not responded to comment. So I'm not certain. It may be a level of evidence that they're not quite comfortable with yet. There's a lot of videos, and it's, you know, sometimes unclear who is who on the video. Right. And some of the voices, perhaps that was a Border Patrol agent. I'm not sure. I didn't see the specific video that you referenced, so I would have to leave that to the prosecutors and the investigators who have, as I said, either declined to comment or not responded.
People in the group say they're going to the border to assist law enforcement because, you know, they believe they don't have enough resources, so they're helping them. Is their argument at times that they're making a citizen's arrest, which you and I as citizens are able to do if we see a law being broken, right? We have the legal right to make a citizen's arrest in waiting for police. Is that their defense?
That seems to be the undercurrent. I haven't heard that specific phrasing, but that's certainly the undercurrent, right? And when I say I haven't heard that specific phrasing, I've reached out to this group. They've also not responded, but they have said on their Facebook page and social media that they are upholding the Constitution and upholding U.S. law. And in fact, it is illegal. It's a misdemeanor crime to cross the border illegally.
Right.
Generally speaking, that's not processed or prosecuted right now. It's the administration tried to prosecute that in larger numbers. They've done that for individuals, single adults, but with families, they're not prosecuting anybody in families, generally speaking, because that would require separating the families, separating the children. That happened last summer. It ended amid a flurry of criticism and outcry and so on. So,
all right, Alicia, thank you for telling us everything you know. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.